Here's Stanley.
All
Okay.
right, we're all set.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Vice President Lupien, and this is Council's Agenda Review, where we go over the legislation for February. And our Chief of Staff, James Smith, is going to walk us through the legislation.
Awesome. Thank you, Vice President Lupien. And I'm gonna walk through, as you said, and then we will be taking questions, noting questions, and then forwarding them and working with Josanne Reeves to get answers, as you know. The first one is introductory 48, the cancellation of refund of erroneous taxes and charges. Any questions?
I have
Okay.
a question.
Yes.
So from the reading, this looks like there was a 33-month lapse. And so I wanted to know if there were any processes that have been put in place that would prevent this from happening in the future or create a red flag so it doesn't go that long again.
I think we can talk with Mike Zazzara about that and we'll work to get an answer to that question. I will tell you that this involves the county because it's the airport, but typically a not-for-profit or someone like that would be very motivated to let us know that that status had changed. And so they would typically let us know that. In this instance, the county apparently did not with the change in usage, but that's a great question and we'll make sure we get that to Mike Zazzara, who is the city's assessor. Any other question? All right, we'll move to the next item, introductory 49, appropriation insurance reserve fund.
I have two questions. Is the 7 million an anticipated amount or will it cover claims already adjudicated?
That's a good question, Josanne. I'm not sure if you know that off the top of your head. I thought this was an anticipation, but we can certainly get that clarified.
Yeah, I believe it is anticipated, but we should clarify that.
Okay, and then can we get a listing of claim types and amounts of judgments since 2019?
Yeah, we will ask for that. As a suggestion, it might be helpful too to have a conversation with the Corporation Counsel about some significant pending litigation that is anticipated may be quite costly for the city. And I think it's important that members of council be aware of that because obviously it's a liability. And while we're not sure how the court may settle those matters, we probably have a fairly good indication that if they settle those matters against us, that it would be a significant cost to the city of Rochester.
It's a good idea.
Are there any other questions on introductory 49? We'll move to introductory 50, agreement with Full Moon Vista Productions Incorporated for the Rochester Twilight Festival. This event used to be the Twilight Criterium, which was a bike race, if you remember that from some years past in our pre-COVID lifetimes.
James, it is the same thing. It's a bike race. They felt like no one understood what a criterion meant, so they changed it to festival.
I will, as an interesting note for folks, particularly as Rochester is the home of Susan B. Anthony, this is one of the only professional sporting events in the country in which the prize purse is equal for the winner of the men's version as well as the women's version. And it was something they did here in Rochester quite purposefully because of our history.
If you haven't been, it is an amazing event. I highly suggest going.
Yes, they do a great job. I mean, I'll tell you. And what's beautiful about the event, it's free. It's free. And then they also encourage people to participate as amateurs too. So they usually have an amateur race.
It's something you'd think was happening in a different country. It's got a very different feel to it. It's a really unique and wild experience. Are there any questions about the Twilight Bike Race Criterium Festival?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I think it sounds fabulous. I'm just wondering if there is a cost breakdown somewhere.
Yes, when I didn't see it here, I said, they're going to ask for a cost breakdown. So could you get that together for me now? So actually, I'll make sure, put it in as a question, but I'll make sure that you have the answer to that.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? We'll move to.
No, James, I would just say for everyone else, this is obviously takes place at the library, and as the liaison of the library board, it's something the library is very supportive of over the years too.
Good to know.
Do they have a role in that, Councilman Gruber? Specifically, other than promotion?
Yeah, I think, James, you probably know as well as I do, but I believe they allow folks to use their restrooms, the parking garage, and obviously when I say there, it's the cities as well, but they're the kind of host of it. So I think there's a lot of free promotion that the library gets. They bring out the bookmobile. They do a lot of different things to try to engage the folks who are there. And it's been a very good relationship between the festival promoters and the library themselves.
Yeah, that they do use it as an opportunity for promotion for the folks who are there to be able to get access to the library, and then for the library to be able to show some of what they do. And also I think that library patrons enjoy coming to the event and then also still being able to interact a little bit with the library. And the city's $30,000 is a sponsorship. So I don't know if Josanne will be able to get back to you, Councilmember Smith, with the specifics. It's sort of a buying into the event and sort of all of what it is that they're providing. But there is a cost breakdown of the event, I'm sure, that we can provide you with through the administration. If there's no other questions on the Rochester Twilight Festival, we'll go to introductory 51, agreement with the Rochester International Jazz Festival, LLC.
Yes, I have a question for this one. Two questions. So we're sure they're returning back to Center City, Rochester, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and how much did we end up paying them for last year?
I believe 0, but I can get that amount.
Okay, thank you.
That's what I was told.
I recall it was 0 as well. Yes.
Okay, that was my concern. Thank you.
It better be 0. They didn't have a festival.
I have a question too. I see that the allocation has increased to 243,000. Looks like the previous rate, we had 175 with some in-kind services. Could we get a sense of, I guess it's similar to Councilmember Smith's question on the other festival, what the breakdown is and what changed from 175 to 243? So
actually, I can actually answer this.
Yep.
And with direct knowledge of it. If you look, it says in 2016 and 2015, the city approved agreements for 175. So it goes back quite a ways. So what was happening in those days, it wasn't a very transparent process. The city was giving them a cash allocation, but then the city was also paying or basically eating, I guess, depending on how you want to define that, the cost for police. And they were doing that as a way to give the festival more funding, but without helping the cash allocation through city council. And at the time, Councilmember Conklin had said she no longer, and city council had said they no longer wanted the city administration to eat police costs for anyone, so that if one group had to pay for police at an event, every group had to pay for police. And so at the time, I was the director of special events, and so we took the entire real cost, and then we added that police cost to the regular the regular funding of the festival, and came up with this $243,000. So what that really represents, $243,000 is the real cost of the event. And it appeared cheaper back in 2015 and 2016 because the police costs were kind of being written off, if you will.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question. Can we get a list of the festivals that do receive money from the city, along with their length and the amount given?
Absolutely. Joanne, we'll make sure that we get that from special events.
Mary,
and
Mary, do you mean the length that it has been happening or the length of days that the
The
festival?
length of
is?
days that the festival runs for.
Thanks.
Both might be helpful, so you have a sense of the
Sure.
history of some of the events.
Mhm. I also have a question. I'm
Councilmember
sorry, Councilmember Lupian. Did I just,
I do have another question, but I can add it at the end.
no, go ahead.
My second question is around the police. What rate do we charge festivals for police at special events?
Everyone,
Mhm.
I'm sorry. Everyone is charged the same rate, and it is based on budget. Budget comes up with an allocation that is the real cost, the quote unquote real cost that includes fringe and other issues related to compensation and what it really costs us for the police officer.
That was my question. If it did include those other things, is there a way to get kind of a breakdown of how that number was arrived at from budget?
We can ask budget to give you, how they establish that number. And if it's not updated every year, it's updated very regularly. So we'll have to ask budget to give us the rationale how they establish that dollar amount.
Thank you.
Councilmember Smith?
Yeah, shamefully, I have never attended the Jazz Fest, but I plan to this year. I am wondering, but I know that there are ticket sales. So I'm wondering how much money has come back to the city as a result of those sales?
So I can answer that as well from my knowledge in my past role. So the city these dollars aren't for those paid concerts. What the city puts money towards are the free events that occur outdoors that are open to everyone. And so the dollars that we provide are to enable those events to happen so that everyone can attend them. And the other piece of the festival, that paid stuff at the Eastman and all of that, the Eastman Theater and other venues, that is separate. So, and also there's a report every year that is generated by the festival. It would be somewhat dated now because it has been a few years since it took place. But if we could get that, Joanne, from the last iteration of that,
Sure.
that would be, I think that'd be helpful, and I'm sure council would appreciate it.
James, I'd also like to add, and I'm sure you can speak to this, that the smaller restaurants, food trucks, venues that participate really rely on this jazz festival for business around the city as well. So that's a piece of it that you can't really quantify in here, but it's very important to the smaller restaurants and food trucks.
Absolutely. Whole hospitality industry, and I can tell you this from when it didn't happen, those businesses were very, they took a real hit, and they were very vocal, especially when the Jazz Fest made some rumblings about going to RIT. Those city businesses were very vocal and were very upset about that because of the amount of revenue that this provides to them.
Does that report include the full economic impact to the city?
I think it does. I remember reading it, and I'm pretty sure it's in the report. I think it does include that.
Okay.
James, I have two questions.
Yes, Mitch.
First is what the kind of, if there's contingency plans in terms of the free concerts and COVID venues, like what kind of contingency plans they're making, assuming the pandemic still has restrictions. I guess that's the way I want to state it. And secondly, I think this kind of gets at what Councilmember Lupian was asking related to. I think what's dollar amounts are chosen for some festivals versus others, and certainly there must be some type of formula. I guess I would just ask how the administration determines what sponsorship to put forward for each festival, and feel free to wordsmith that as you'd like, but. I'd imagine the Jazz Fest is a lot more expensive to run than any other festival. But I'd leave it to the administration to help explain how they come to that conclusion.
I mean, the real answer is that these events were all put in place at different times. They're legacy events. They have different price tags. The city at different times in history had more or less money to invest in different events. And they kind of continue on with where they were. And as some events grow, like Fringe Festival has gotten some additional funding in the past from where they started. But I think, if you ask them, they would show that they probably could use even more, funding from the city to be able to do more. It really, Mitch, there isn't a formula or a rhyme or reason as much as I'd like the administration to come back and tell us that. I mean, I can tell you, because I've answered this question, in over the past 7 years, that it really is, it is not, it isn't as formulaic as you would like. We have done some things differently in the city of Rochester to have a special events funding application that comes through. So the events need to justify what they're asking for, and they do put forward asks. And in the past, for instance, Pride and Black Pride have received funding when they hadn't, and that was based on their request and a very sympathetic director at the time who was happy to see those events get some additional funding. But there is no great formula to be shared. It really is a process that has evolved over time. There's legacy events. They've gotten certain dollar amounts, and those investments kind of continue into perpetuity, or at least they have. If there's something different that should happen in the future, it hasn't happened to date. That's the way that these things are.
Fair enough, James. I mean, I asked you that question as communications director for all 4 years. I don't expect there to be more of an answer than that, but I think that's a starting point for beginning to create a more maybe a different process with this administration. So I think I'd like the question to be asked, and we'll see where it goes. Thank you.
Any more questions on introductory 51? Introductory 52, IT networking upgrades, the ARPA funding.
I have 2 questions. One, can infrastructure dollars be used for this expense? And 2, if so, what are the implications of waiting to implement this project until we have clarity on infrastructure dollars and how they can be spent?
We'll find that out. Are there any other questions?
Yes. Go ahead, Councilmember Smith.
Yeah, and just to follow up on that, would one of those implications be a hit to our centers where they want to increase the broadband capacity? But it looks like, I certainly wasn't a math major, but it looks like only 1% of those total dollars are going towards the R centers. So just a breakdown of the cost of each project, not necessarily a cost breakdown of each project, but just a total cost of each, if that makes sense.
Yep. Councilmember Pale?
Yes, will this bandwidth be able to handle any future like esports tournaments or programs?
Great question.
Why, thank you.
Which we hopefully will get the answer to.
Another
there any-
question.
Yeah.
Can we get a list of all the sites that will be impacted by these IT upgrades?
Any other questions? Hearing none, we'll go to introductory 53, committing tax relief and retirement reserves and amendment to ordinance 2021-397. Any questions? There are none. We'll go to introductory 54, Financial Empowerment Center grant acceptance.
I have a question. If you could you ask, can they explain why Redco retains 3% of the grant funds? And the transmittal for me was a little, I guess it was a little confusing. I was just trying to figure out what's the total ask. It was just hard to figure out. So it looks like we're going to receive 10,000 from a grant.
Yes, they have to have a pass-through, and that's where Redco's involved, and it does involve paperwork. So because some Redco staff will be doing some of the paperwork, they're retaining 3%.
Okay. Well, I think one of the other transmittals kind of like had a breakdown in a grid of all the cost and the asks associated with the transmittal. Is that something that we can request?
Sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, because it looks like there's 3 specific actions being happening here.
Absolutely.
I have a question. Do we have a upcoming work session on the financial empowerment centers?
We have an ask out for one, but we
Okay.
haven't scheduled it.
Okay, because I have a question, but I think I can wait for that as long as it's coming up soon.
The original ask was sometime this month, but it's a short month, so I would anticipate maybe end of this month, next month.
Mhm.
I have one as well. If you're done, Vice President Lupien. All right. How many FEC clients transitioned from Section 8 rental to home ownership last year?
We can find that out.
Thank you.
Yeah, and along those lines, and I thank you for asking that, because my question was related to Councilman Payo and Councilmember Harris. And that is, it says $1,000 to clients, but it does not tell us how many clients, which means we have no idea, which goes back to what Councilmember Harris was asking. We don't know what is going to be like operating costs and what is going to be used for the actual services.
Yeah, it would be interesting to know how many folks would those grants affect, or how many they go, could it potentially serve?
Could we schedule a work session with the Financial Empowerment Center?
Yes, we definitely could. I do believe the administration is taking a look at it, where the best fit might be, what they did in the past, what they might do in the future. So I don't know if you want to wait until they've taken a look at it, or if you prefer to take a look at it prior to. That's your call.
That's what I was saying earlier. We have an ask out to have a work session about the financial empowerment centers.
I'm open to whichever, depending on what my other council members think.
I think it would be good to hear what they're planning, if there is going to be a change.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to hear about it ASAP.
Agree.
I'll follow up again today.
Thank you.
Are there any more questions on introductory 54? If not, we'll move to introductory 55, appointments, the Board of Assessment Review. Any questions? Okay, we'll move to introductory
I do.
50s. Okay,
Sorry.
go ahead. Sorry.
Looking for the button. What quadrant are these appointees from? And is there a rule about balancing members from all 4 quadrants?
we can find that out. Joanne, do you have any insight into the quadrant? If-
Yeah, I don't know where they're from, but I don't think there is a rule for Board of Assessment. I think it's more skill-based. That rule applies to zoning, the land use boards, that they have to be from certain quadrants.
The resumes are on file with the clerk, and I do believe their addresses are on the resumes.
They are.
I think that they prefer city residents. You know, have to be a city resident.
You don't have to be.
Not that I think they prefer that you are a city resident.
It's typically realtors and appraisers and folks who
Yes.
navigate professionally within those areas.
I guess my question is, Councilmember Harris, if they prefer it, does that mean that it's not a requirement? So I guess that's my question. It's a requirement.
You would have to ask administration.
Yeah.
But I know that in the past, they've always asked for city residents when they requested folks for those positions.
Okay, maybe we can just clarify that.
Any other questions on introductory 55? If not, we'll take questions on introductory 56, the appointment for Action for a Better Community. I've heard this is a very solid appointment.
Congratulations, Councilwoman Stanley Martin.
I mean, what do we really know about this appointment?
Well, I do have a question about this. The question is, why is this under finance?
Because it's a board. It's a bad answer.
That's
It
it.
sounds like the answer is because that's the way we've always done it.
It's, yeah, and
Ooh.
I hate that answer.
Ooh, that's
Um,
maybe cringe.
So maybe we should talk about that in the future, but that's how
Yeah.
it was assigned.
We're actually looking if like legislation is necessary, but again, we've always done legislation, and we really didn't think you guys as a body would vote down given the appointment. And so this is something we're now working through.
Well, I don't know, Katie. I have a question.
Yeah.
Councilman Martin, are you committed to action for a better community?
So yeah, I think, James, we have to get that in as one of the questions.
All
Joanne,
right.
I can answer that, and we will get that out there.
We want it in writing.
It seems we will be able to get an answer to that question. We will pursue that. I do want to go back on record as saying, however, I do believe this is a very highly qualified candidate for this position. So. All right, introductory 86, which is a tweener services agreement amendment for legal services for charter franchise renewal.
I did not see that one. Is it possible to get it up on screen?
I knew you were gonna ask it. Give me 1 second.
You work your magic. While Katie's doing that for the new members of council, this goes back when cable TV was a new industry, and the federal government granted these franchise areas. So cities and other municipalities that host cable television companies got these payments, and it has become something that the industry has bristled against over time, where they don't want to make the payments or they want to make less payment to the municipality. And so we have had to, over the years, engage legal counsel, outside legal counsel, because it's a very specialized little slice of law that has to do with federal communications law and the FCC. And so we typically contract with these outside legal firms in order to kind of push back and try to continue to get our share of those dollars. And so I think this sort of encapsulates that and what and what the administration is looking to do in that regard going forward. And if I remember correctly, Joanne, we're being sued by Charter Communications as a result of them wanting to reduce the amount of money that we receive.
That is very correct.
I thought it was Verizon. No.
Not this time.
No, it's a Charter Spectrum.
They might
Time
be too.
or
Who
whatever,
knows?
whatever they're
Yeah,
called
they
at the moment.
Just a question for the team. If people have questions on 86 and 87, could we get a little more time to submit those? It just came in today. So I really need to review both.
Fine with me.
Sure. By a little more time, do you mean tomorrow or do you mean like next week? Because these answers are all due Tuesday at noon to me. So I'm just trying to figure out.
Yeah, if we have questions, try to submit it by close of business tomorrow.
Okay.
You can tell I stamped it in since I screwed it up. Many apologies.
Way to go, Katie.
I know. Fire me. I'm just
Oh, you
kidding.
wish.
Please don't. No.
Nobody even noticed the mistake till you pointed it out, Katie.
Okay, are there any other questions on this one? If not, we'll go to introductory 87, another tweener. Amendment to ordinance 2021-379, Visual Lease LLC for GASB 87 lease accounting software. And GASB, if you don't know, is the Government Accounting Standards Board.
I got better at stamping on this one.
Any questions? If not,
So we were working with Visual Lease directly, and now we're working with a reseller for Visual Lease. Is that right?
Yes, as they explained to us in the finance meeting today, that there really is no change in this from the ordinance passed at the end of last year. It's that the changes are not in the price or the product, but simply who we're purchasing it from. And it had to do with some legalities on the other end.
Okay, so we authorized a contract, but it wasn't fulfilled, and now we're changing who it's with. Got it.
Yep.
any other questions? If not, we'll move to NBD legislation. Introductory 57, sale of real estate. 482 to 484 Portland Avenue.
I have a question. I think that in the transmittal, there was no map of the space.
The map has subsequently been provided as a information amendment through that process. So we do have the map now.
Oh, okay.
Yes, but you are 100% correct. It was missing and it inadvertently had not been transmitted.
Josanne, is there a map for the second property? That I believe the map that was provided in info and amendments is for the first property?
I'm not sure what happened in SharePoint, but all the maps were provided by NBD
Okay.
and it was in a PDF. So I don't know how they didn't make it through the channel, but if it isn't there, I can provide that as well.
Yeah, if you
Thank
can
you.
provide that, thank you.
Any questions on introductory 57? Move to introductory 58, accepting a real estate donation of 871 to 875 Joseph Avenue. This will allow the Lincoln Branch Library to expand their parking lot and also to work with adjacent property owner for some additional parking for them as well. Any questions? If not, we'll go to introductory 59, acquisition of 27 York Street. This is part of the Bull's Head neighborhood development, strategic acquisition for that development.
Yeah, James, how many up-to-date properties have we acquired as it relates to the Bull's Head Plaza project?
There
we
is,
get an
I asked
update?
them to provide a map, which they did, that shows all the city-owned properties at Bull's Head
Okay.
with the
And
legislation.
are there any additional that have to be acquisitioned as well? Outside of what's being shown? I don't have the transmitter in front of me, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Willie, when you do look at it, you will see that there's a significant amount of the property there is now under the control of the city. And this is somewhat strategic at York Street as York comes off of West Avenue at that funny kind of the oddly aligned intersection with Chilai. I don't believe there are any more, but maybe we can check Josanne through NBD just to see if there's any more significant. There might be some other parcels, like this one that come along, but I think for right now, I'm pretty sure it was pretty much, everything had been acquired that they were hoping to acquire or that they thought that they would be able to acquire.
Have we, and this relates to the Bull's Head, have we had any update on existing businesses relocations as a result of other businesses being required? What is, but I know it's not in the transmittal, but just a sidebar conversation maybe for some other time. I know we did get a presentation on this a while back, but it's been a while now. I don't know how. I still see kicks and caps, and I still see some of those businesses still seem like they're open and they're doing business. I wanted to know, are we still working towards that relocation plan, and what does that look like?
I know there's an NBD update coming up in the next few weeks, so maybe you could add that to the agenda.
That's
for a
fine.
work
Thank
session.
you.
Okay.
I'd like to ask a question following up with Councilmember Lightfoot's question. On that block, is it the intent to buy additional properties on York Street to acquire all of those properties that's left on that particular block? Because based on the map, just like Councilwoman Lightfoot mentioned, it looks like, the city has acquired quite a bit of it, and it makes me, believe that maybe there's the intent to buy the rest of them between York Street and is it Algonquin Terrace?
Yeah, we'll find that out from NBD.
And just in follow up with that, it's just challenging for me to just think about strategic acquisition opportunity in a neighborhood. And my mind immediately goes to displacement. And so for this particular property, was this a business or a two-family home, and who encouraged that sale?
It was a vacant residential property, it says in the transmittal.
Okay. Whew. Thank you.
But it was a two-family home.
But it was vacant.
Yes.
Okay.
Can I, James, can you include a question about, so it says it's going to be demolished. I'd like to just understand if it's been kind of looked at from a preservation perspective, when it's from, and if there's been an analysis that way.
Yep, we can ask that question.
Can we find out how the house became vacant? Was this something that was initiated by the city, or did it just happen to be naturally vacant?
And what's the overall development plan for the Bull's Head Plaza?
I think given how substantial this project is, Councilmember Martin, we should definitely, get council updated on what the objective is with the overall project, the scope and all that. We'll get you that through NBD. I think it's really important that we all understand it, because this is a transformative project that you need to really understand what that means and how transformative it's going to be, and which direction that transformation is going to happen. So, Katie and Josanne will work to kind of figure out how we can best get that council briefed on this project. I know there's some NBD work session coming up, so that may be a really good topic to get on there, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Yep. Any other questions on introductory 59? If not, we'll move to the Urban Renewal Agency, approving the Rochester Urban Renewal Agency annual report. I know there was a revision and some information added to that as a result of Chairman Patterson's meeting with the agency. So you should have that. If you don't have it right now, you will have it shortly. But it was a minor revision, Katie, if I remember.
I don't know if we were actually going to submit info and amendment for it. It was regarding page, give me 1 second. I think 13 of the report. 1 second. Oh, I'm sorry, page 11. And on the page 11 of the report, it says that those properties on Broadway were planned to be sold, but this report was written back in June, and the property owner has since died in an accident. And so the properties are not probably going to be sold.
Those properties are adjacent to the Inn on Broadway, which is near the traffic circle. And the reason the city has these parcels, they're small parcels that were basically consumed to some degree by the creation of the traffic circle. And so they're adjacent to the Inn on Broadway. The owner of the Inn on Broadway had some plans to do some expansion and investment there. And so the city had planned actually to sell those parcels to him. And as Katie said, he passed away in an accident. And so other uses had been for parking lot. And I think that the city was, reluctant to do that. So this may come back up in the future, depending on what happens with the Inn on Broadway and its ownership, obviously, given the issue with the state and all of that.
Mm-hmm. And similarly to intro 59, I have no idea what this is. So I have a couple holds on my calendar for next week with maybe a possible work session or an explanation. But if there is any background or documented history on this, I certainly would like it soon, please.
So Wendy is working with Rick Rinsky and some NBD folks to schedule a work session with you and Councilmember Martin about the RURA orientation, and they wanted to do this ahead of time because of this item. And so Wendy's been out sick for 2 days, but hopefully we can get that firmed up.
Yeah.
Great, but it looks like that will happen, Katie, Monday or Tuesday.
Are those the holds?
Yes.
Okay, I'll look into it tomorrow if Wendy's not back.
Yeah, we'll diligently do that because you are agents of the Urban Renewal Agency. And so with that obviously comes responsibility. We want to make sure that you're fully aware of that because it's certainly important. Any other questions on the Urban Renewal Agency?
I have several.
Okay, Mary, hang on 1 second. Our interpreter just had to take a drink. So I saw her say here she is, she's back.
Thank you for catching that. What are the outcomes and expenditures for the targeted commercial exterior improvement grant?
I'm guessing we're going to have to ask that question to get an answer to it, unless Josanne knows.
I do not have that at the tip of my tongue. I am sorry.
If I'm pausing, it's not necessarily for an answer, but just so that you get it down.
Thank you.
Will properties in the Market View Heights and University of Rochester plan be placed in a land trust? I think I already know the answer to that, but I'm hoping it's different.
Are these the questions? I just have a question about your questions. Are these in the questions you submitted?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I want to ask them on the record.
Oh, I know.
Yeah. Okay. So there was one thing that maybe you could clear up for me about the budget. It looks like there's I think I'm confused in reading it. It looks like there's a $2 million deficit, unless that was a surplus. But if it is a deficit, how did that accumulate and how will it be recouped? There were non-operating expenses listed, if we could get a breakdown of what those were. And then this one was not in the one that you saw, Katie. it talks about 151 Mount Hope and says that no recommendation has been made. But I do know that Frederick Douglass Family Initiatives, FDFI, had announced a possible proposal for that plot of land. So I just wondered if there was a status update on that.
And what was the community input around this? What did that look like? When did it take place around this project?
And with the approval of this report, like what does it mean to approve it, especially for new council members like myself and Councilmember Smith? And why does it have to be approved by us?
It has to do with the New York State's policy on public authorities, and that they're required to file an annual report. And so that's I believe is what is driving this actual report and why it goes, you approve it and it's then forwarded on. Okay, are there any other questions on the Urban Renewal Agency? If not, we'll go to introductory 60, 61, city code amendments to enable digital trade license applications. Any questions for
I
our
just want to say
plumbers and electricians and stationary engineers and the like?
it's always great when we can get things online.
Not bad. We've arrived in 1990 and 2022, right? So it's pretty cool. If there's no other questions, introductory 62, an agreement environmental review lead agency. Any questions on this one? We'll go to Public Works. Introductory 63, the Rundle Library Structural Terrace Improvement Phase 4 project.
Yeah, can we get an understanding of what has been spent on this project so far and what is remaining? Along with, the breakdown.
So the first 3 phases and then what may be coming, or specifically phase 4?
I think of all the phases.
Okay.
Though there may be, they may have already answered that question in previous agenda reviews. So maybe after I'll take a look and see what they've already given.
I will note that during the session that Councilman Pale held with the DES, one of the requests that was made by the chair was that, given that Rundle is such an important and historic structure downtown and within, the cultural fabric of the city, that there are a lot of potential pending projects and costly projects with the building and the facility, given its age and its historic character, that council be briefed a bit on that, because there will be more projects likely coming for parapet improvements in the future and also glazing, which will be costly, and it'd probably be good if you have some sense of what's coming. So it just doesn't seem like there's a Rundle expense every year or every month.
It does seem that way.
Yeah.
I wonder if that would fit in the upcoming work session. It's probably not one all it's on its own, but
I think they need a little more time, because the architect and engineering are also trying to get the whole kind of package together of sort of the big picture with Rundle, and some of that is still evolving.
okay. Why don't I wait then on that question until we can get a bigger picture?
Okay. Any other questions on introductory 63? If not, we'll go to introductory 64, agreement with Ravi Engineering and Land Surveying PC, Erie Harbor Enhancements Phase 2. which Erie Harbor Enhancements Phase 2 is on the east side of the Genesee River, running south from Spectrum Cable to Ford Street.
Yes, I think that it looks amazing on the other side of the river. I'm looking forward to more improvements. My question is to what are plans for the bike path detour when that section is going to be closed?
Okay. Any other questions?
No, I just want to say kudos on the chart and the map on this. It's really, really clear, and I love to see it.
Actually, I wonder if there's a way, and it may not make sense if it isn't something that's regular, but if there is going to be construction that will be disrupting a bike path, if that could be included on any maps that are sent over to us.
The detour details.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions? Then we'll go to introductory 65, professional services agreement with Dunwood Visual LLC, Brooks Landing Revitalization Project. And this is at South Plymouth and Brooks at that, the triangle there where the little pedestrian area is at that kind of oddly formed intersection.
I know this project has been in the works for a couple of years now. It's glad to see it finally happening.
More like 10, Mary.
Since I've known about it, I think it's been about 4 years.
It's all relative, right?
All right. If there's no other questions, we'll go to introductory 66, 67, 68, 69. South Avenue, Elmwood Avenue to Bellevue Drive, and Elmwood Avenue from Mount Hope Avenue to South Avenue Street Improvement Project. And this looks like a full reconstruction as far as the improvement goes. The improvements go, rather. Any questions? If not, we go to introductory 70, 71. Hazardous sidewalk replacement program, Northwest Quadrant Contract 2022 Phase 3. Comprehensive sidewalk replacement in Northwest Quadrant with a significant amount of information and maps, et cetera, for the ambitious sidewalk replacement that's being proposed.
I was just going to comment that my question when I was reading through the transmittal was going to be, you know, what's entailed in this? And then I was pleased to find all the details I ever needed about what's going on.
Yeah. Any questions?
Yeah, James,
Yeah.
I don't exactly know how to frame the question, and it's probably going to be a conversation I might even start at the committee meeting. But you know, sidewalks right now, especially with the weather we're experiencing at the moment, I'd like to know how this map is going to be reflective of the winter that we're having. I'm sure there's a lot of wear and tear during the winter months, and how they're going to update it, what the process is for that in the spring. And I'd like to have a larger conversation about sidewalk clearing. I know the mayor started that yesterday, but that's a separate conversation.
Yeah, we can certainly ask for more information on sidewalk clearing. I can tell you that the city DES walk the sidewalks in order to determine, you know, the hazardous sidewalk replacement and repair, and they will do that again before initiating this. And if they have to add some, they will. We did discuss that a little bit in the PPW meeting.
Okay, then you don't need to add a question. Thank you.
To be fair, we had interns walk it, which I was pretty funny, I thought.
They go back out too. It's not just the interns.
Hey, if they're an intern, they're part of the city, if you ask me.
Do we have dates when they do those things? I would love to see how they actually do that. I'd walk with them, get some steps in.
Yeah, we can ask, right, Kay? We can ask.
Mhm.
I have a question. Councilmember Pale, how much walking?
Yo, and how much walking? I do a lot of walking in the wintertime.
I can assure you that I will not be doing any walking this evening. Huh. All right, if there's no more questions on that, we'll go to introductory 75, grant acceptance, New York State Energy Research and Development Authority, Clean Energy Communities Program.
Did we skip 72, 73, 74?
We sure did. But we can
I have
go
a
back
question
to the Weaver Street Rehabilitation Project, Remington Street to Hudson Avenue. It's a
So my
milling and surfacing project.
My question on this one is, is it just milling and resurfacing, or is there more?
It's a milling and resurface with a little bit more, but it's not a full reconstruction. They're gonna do some spot sidewalk replacement and some curbing and curb ramp upgrades.
Okay, I guess that was my question. And I know that the price tag can be shocking on these projects, but it seems like it's only 3 blocks long, and that's a lot of, $2 million. So I guess maybe the question would be, is this a comparable amount for other streets that we've done, or is this somehow more costly because of the extra things that we're doing? And then just maybe an idea of what we are doing. I know it said some in the transmittal, but thank you.
Yeah, I would just, you can ask it separately or just amend Councilmember Lupien's, but this is really expensive, and I'm assuming there must be something going on with utilities or something else. So I'd love to just ask plainly, why is this as expensive as it is?
One of the things they did say in the PPW meeting, they gave us some figures about how much more expensive materials have become and are becoming, just big leaps. So I'm sure they'll give us some detail like that.
Yeah, one sidewalk, 1 yard of sidewalk went from $800 to $2,000.
Right. Because of the cost of concrete.
Any other questions? If not, introductory 75, grant acceptance, New York State Energy Research and Development Authority, Clean Energy Communities Program for electric vehicle charging stations at the South Avenue Garage.
I have a question. How many electric vehicle stations will this grant provide? And can we get a little bit more description about the stations? You know, how do they work? I mean, do I have to swipe my card to pay for services or for electric? Or how does that work? I've never really.
It's free.
Okay, it's free?
Yeah, and the equipment they're using, they can charge for it, but it will be free. And I believe it's 2 like outlets, for lack of a better term, with 2 ports each, so it's 4 total charging stations, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
And these are not the Tesla charging. I guess there's 2 kinds of charging stations. One's a Tesla station and one is like the regular old, non-Tesla electric car people station. And that's what this will be. It's not the Tesla station. But people who have Tesla cars apparently have an adapter that they can use at these stations as well.
Is there a way that we can, I mean, I don't know if the administration is going to do an analysis to see if 4 will be enough, or, should we look at securing additional, especially since I'm seeing a whole lot more Teslas and other electric vehicles on the road now? And, will we continue to offer this free, how long will that free last?
We'll ask those questions. Are there any other questions on introductory 75? If not, we'll go to introductory 76, funding appropriation summer 2022 lead service line replacement program 2B.
I have a question on that one as well. After this funding has been allocated for the 1460 lead service lines to be replaced, how many more will need to be replaced? And, is there a schedule or a plan for that? Can you share with us?
James, just to piggyback off of Councilmember Harris's, I believe this lead issue, this is one of my pet peeves, this, lead replacement. And so I ask these questions every year, but I think this should be a part of a quarterly update we should get around lead replacement project. Okay, I would recommend that we make that a part of a quarterly update. Okay. Please.
I would also like to piggyback off of Lightfoot. And I'm not sure, maybe you guys can give me some background, James and Josanna. Has the schools ever been checked for the lead? I know I've done some research in some schools in other parts of the country. They found there was issues. They had to shut down the water fountains in the schools and stuff. So have we ever looked at that as well?
I can tell you in the past, we have had to shut down drinking fountains in city schools because of that testing for lead, elevated lead levels. So I know that the City Water Bureau does test regularly in schools. Or actually it may be the city school district, but they report back to the Water Bureau. So that testing does occur, and it has happened in the past that they've had to not allow the kids to drink the water in the schools. But as I remember in the past, it was the actual appliance, like the drinking water fountain and some other things that were older that were replaced, and it alleviated the issue. But we should ask the question maybe as to, of the Water Bureau, Josanne, as to how regularly are they tested?
And to what extent, are they just testing the apparatus that they're using, or they're doing the full, system?
Right.
I have a question. This is coming out of ARPA funds, and I know that council had asked to get an idea of how much has been spent already. Did that ever come through?
Mary, I'm working with, I actually just had a finance committee a meeting with the administration that I'm sure just before this, I'm sure Katie will help circulate notes shortly. And I shouldn't say a finance committee meeting. That's wrong. I, as the finance chair, met with the administration and asked precisely for that. So they're working on it, and we'll get an update on when we can expect it fairly soon.
Good to hear. Thanks.
Any other questions? If not, we'll move on to introductory 77 and the Public Safety, Recreation, and Human Services Committee agreement bans on the Bricks concert series, the Rochester Public Market. Any questions?
Yeah, James, I just wanted to know what was the, I remember it very vividly. I know we didn't do a lot in the last couple of years with COVID or whatnot, but I would ask, what is the marketing plan? Like, how do we, when I remember when we were doing this before COVID, it was a really cool event. And I just want to know, how are they marketing this to the community? What methods are they using? Are they using any radio, things of that nature, to get the word out about these events?
Yeah, we should be able to find that out from special events pretty easily.
Thank you.
Yep.
I have a question. Just, what is the typical diversity in entertainment? In terms of, what types of music and attraction, just to try to bring different demographics to the market.
President Melendez, in the past, it was very diverse. But I think that's a good question to ask for this year.
Thanks.
How much has the city paid funded Bends and the Bricks in previous years? I didn't see that in there. And how was the vendor selected?
The vendor was selected through an RFP process. And there were renewals. It looks like there was a partnership and one of the partners has since retired, but the other is continuing on. But we can
Did they
find
change
out.
the name? It seemed like they changed the name of it then, maybe?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
but it's the same person.
Yeah, the one
Okay.
person is consistent, the other person retired. And we can find out about the historic funding level.
Got it, thank you.
There's no other questions on that. We'll go to introductory 78, grant agreement, New York State Office of Children and Family Services, AmeriCorps.
Just wondering if we can get an update on recruitment for AmeriCorps, if we have the same number if we have the number that we had hoped for, and just a list of the different community organizations that the city's partnering with.
Okay. Any other questions?
What's the process for recruitments? Like, how do agencies and businesses request that they want an AmeriCorps fellow, and what's that whole process like?
We'll find that out. And I would encourage you, we have a dynamic employee that works for the city named Mawia Malawi, who was an intern in communications, and she went on to work for the city and helps coordinate AmeriCorps. And it's so exciting and fun and just loves to talk about what she's doing. So if you ever want more information and want to go out in the field and learn about AmeriCorps, let me know and I'll connect you with Mawia.
Yes, absolutely.
My first position with the city was AmeriCorps.
Record of getting great people from that program.
Okay, any other questions on AmeriCorps? If not, we'll go to introductory 79, license agreement, Genesee Waterways Center.
I have a question on that. How do you get a $1 lease deal?
So over time, they invest money into the center. And I think it's up around, if I remember reading correctly, it's around $200,000 since we partnered with them. So they get a $1 lease, but they have been investing considerable money into the facility. So that's why they get the $1 lease, Councilwoman.
Is that something that's offered to other nonprofits? Depending on, I'm just curious. I think they do a great job. I live in the 19th ward, and they do all kinds of different programmings to get young people and, of course, adults like me to participate in water sports and stuff. So, I'm just not challenging that. I just like to know, I'm curious about the $1. That's all. I've never seen it in city, the transmittals.
Yeah, I think it's somewhat unique, although it's not completely unusual, but I'm sure we can find out. And we can find out the process what process was used to come up with that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yep.
I just want to highlight that 1989 was over 30 years ago, and dividing 200,000 by 30 years is less than $7,000 a year. So it's great that they're contributing to the building, but at the end of the day, it's over 30 years, it's not that much.
How was 1989 only 30 years? It was 30 years ago. Oh my God. That's
I
awful.
graduated in 1990, man. Those are good years, brother.
I graduated in 87. Oh my
Right.
God.
Right, Councilmember Lightfoot?
When I was doing the math, I was like, wait, 89 is only 20 years ago because I'm 30, but nope, I'm not 30.
Mary, yes, you are. All right, we'll have to, let's find out what the, how they were selected and what the terms are and all of that. We'll get that information. Any other questions?
Yeah, to kind of piggyback off of Mary, I was looking at the services they offer and the cost to get people into rowing. It doesn't seem affordable or really accessible to a large population of our city. So I guess how do they even recruit people and city residents to join? And are there scholarships or ways to make it affordable for people who live in the community who may want to engage in water sports, especially since they're paying $1 for the lease?
Yeah.
Are you done, Councilmember Martin? Okay. It's similar kind of to these questions. Is this facility primarily used by U of R students, or is it open to city residents? And what are plans to promote and market these activities to all parts of the city? And then, was there an RFP issued? Or is it just because they've been operating the facility since 1989 that they are continuing in that role?
It does say that the proposal was sent electronically to 5 entities.
Okay, I missed that. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions on this one? If not, introductory 80 agreement, Monroe County High Visibility Engagement Campaign Grant. So this is DWI enforcement done on holiday weekends and high visibility dates.
So can funds from this program be used to pay for transportation as a preventative measure?
You can ask.
I guess, has there been an evaluation of how effective the program is within the 9-time period the grant has been received? What has the overall impact been in comparison to years where the grant hasn't been received?
Okay. Any other questions on this one? If
Yeah,
not, we'll move. Go ahead.
it talks
Sorry.
about, it uses the word drugs. I'd like just confirmation that this does not include cannabis.
If it does include cannabis, is there some kind of legal threshold that you can test for?
Yeah, thank you, Mary. I was just getting ready to say, can't you,
Right.
you can be arrested for cannabis too, right? I mean, for being too high, right? You can't impair your driving, I'm sure.
You can,
Right.
yes, you can.
but I'm not sure there's a way to.
That's a better way of asking the question. Is I guess the question would be how does the outfit intend to address changing cannabis laws and regulations?
Yeah, I'm not sure you can test different levels, but I'm interested if you can.
And being that this is a grant, what would the amendment process look like if that were decided?
Okay. Are there any other questions on this item? If not, we'll go to introductory 81, agreement, Fitch and Associates LLC, analysis of EMS service delivery for the city of Rochester.
I have a question. Can you ask administration, what is the workforce utilization points? What does that represent?
Okay.
And just, I guess the transmittals show that it was put out to multiple vendors. And I was just curious, why wouldn't they choose one of the city vendors, a vendor from the city?
We'll ask that question. I know if you remember, Fitch has done prior studies for the city of Rochester. One of their specialties is in the area of public safety. Notably, they did a study most recently on fire service.
Yeah, I've seen all of their studies. I have copies of them. I was just curious as to, why and what the administration's response would be.
Yeah, we'll investigate that. Are there any other questions on this item?
Could we schedule a work session with EMS? And I guess I'm curious about how all of this would affect the PIC team or other crisis or other non-police crisis response services in regards to how calls are sent out to which specific agency. Like, can there be a focus on that? And can council members ask questions about what areas to focus on? Or guide some questions regarding certain areas to focus on?
Okay. Are there any other questions on this item?
When you say EMS, do you mean the Emergency Communications Department? Or do you mean EMS like this related specifically to this item?
Specifically related to this item.
Okay.
So on that note, Councilman, so the way the city operates with EMS, it's really like a contract management through the fire department, because we do a agreement, and at this moment it's with AMR. So it will be the fire department and one of the battalion chiefs who is particularly kind of the specialist, if you will, in that area, to talk through that. If we wanted to get AMR involved, we'd have to make a special request to them. But if you'd like, I would suggest we start with our fire folks who oversee that contract and also who have a fair amount of expertise and understanding. Then that would be a good place to start. And I would ask Councilmember Harris if you concur, like that would be a good place to start. And also Councilmember Lightfoot, who has a fair amount of expertise in this as well.
Yeah, I would agree. The fire department has been the administrator of that account for many years, and they have expertise, and they should be able to share any data as well that we would need.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the latest iteration of the AMR contract requires data collection as a part of it. Although some of that may have been hampered because of COVID, but definitely there should be some data to back it up for sure. So we'll work on that for you, Councilman Martin.
I know they've had some challenges with the new CAD system, but I think by now that should have been ironed out by now.
Yeah. Yep. It was one of the last meetings I had on this when I was the mayor, actually. I was going to say the deputy mayor. All right, are there any other questions? If not, we'll go to the committee of the whole. Introductory item 82, confirmation of the Commissioner of Neighborhood and Business Development. Hopefully we asked all the questions during the confirmation, right? If there's no questions on that, the next item, introductory 83, confirmation of the Director of the Bureau of Human Resource Management. And if there's no questions on that, introductory 84, confirmation of the Chief of the Rochester Fire Department. And then the next item is introductory 85, amendment to council rules.
I just wanted to mention that I think originally the idea was to put in the rules the communication procedure around sharing notes from meetings that council leadership and chairs have with administration and schedules. And President Melendez, I don't know if we can explain a little bit about why that was changed.
Yes, we did have a conversation with Corporation Counsel on this. So at this moment, I made it a matter of course through the memo, and we'll make sure that we get the notes out and we do a calendar on a monthly basis. But one of the questions was, if we do this, does it have some other implications? And we're still getting some clarity on that. And I think when we have our legal counsel, we'll also evaluate this. But for now, we will make sure that this is a matter of course in terms of how we operate.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions on this item?
Yeah, I guess can someone explain to me functionally, so the difference here in terms of introducing legislation is that previously it was introduced, previously legislation was introduced from the president, and now it can be introduced by anyone, but it then sits in a committee assigned by the clerk until that committee discharges it. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. So essentially what we're doing is, as long as legislation is submitted, everything, follow the process by referral day, it will be in the cycle and it will be assigned just as any other legislation would be from administration.
And
Oh, go ahead.
sorry, go ahead.
I just want to note that the president does assign the committee and it's then forwarded to the clerk. You had just said that the clerk assigns the committee, but it'll follow the same process as other legislation from the administration.
Got it. And so for just from functionally speaking, if someone wanted to propose legislation or write legislation, I assume no one would do this without having some conversations first. But if someone wanted to propose legislation the day of or the day before a committee meeting, and it had not yet been something that had been looked at or discussed with council or administration, it still sits in committee at that point, or there's discretion about when it gets actually put into committee? That's the part I'm not totally understanding.
Sure. So let me see if I can try to explain this. So what would happen at that point, let's say if something came after referral day, then it would be at the discretion of the president to decide if it's going to make it in the cycle as a tweener or something. More than likely, because of the amount of staff work that it requires, it will come in the next legislative cycle in the following month.
Got it. So anything before referral day is just part of the regular legislation. Anything after referral day is at the discretion of the president.
Correct.
Okay.
But it will be in the next month cycle.
Sure. Right.
Yeah.
Understood. Okay. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? If not, that's the last item. Is there anything else to discuss
I
Just
guess
a-
I just have a quick clarifying question. Like when you say it's for the chorus, are you saying like you advise routinely that when people have meetings, like for example, when Councilmember Gruber has a meeting with administration about finances, that it's required or expected that notes are distributed to the rest of the council members?
Yeah, so all of the actions that are part of our legislative cycle. So if PPW has a meeting with Councilmember Pio about the legislation for the month, those meetings will have notes being taken by council staff. And all of those notes, like we received today from PPW and NBD, will then be distributed to all council members, which presumably we probably had notes available in the past, but we didn't do that as a matter of course. So I'm assuming whatever happened today with finance, that we'll be receiving some notes. And what we put in the memo is that we expect that staff will turn those around within 5 business days.
Sounds good. Thank you.
And I think the goal is to have these meetings ahead of time so that by the time we get to agenda and chairs, they've already had time to meet with their departments. Are the notes then going to be 5 business days may put us past the agenda review window, but maybe at least they've had the chance to have the conversations and we can talk about it. They could share it with us, but I guess ideally it would be great if the notes were distributed before, but because I think we have PPW and
NBD.
NBD.
Yeah.
So those happened on Monday and Tuesday, and the notes went out today, this morning.
Because you're a superstar.
Well, and I think the idea behind 5 business days was just to make sure that we're not putting undue pressure on staff. You know, if we can get it earlier, we'll push to do it earlier.
And February is a crunched up month too, because most of these meetings will happen after referral day, but before agenda review, and you only had exactly 1 week this month.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, the goal is to make sure that we have as much information as possible earlier in the cycle so that we have more time to, dig in. So that's good that the goal is still to get those notes before agenda review. And I do want to highlight that this procedure is for communication. It governs communications between council and administration, but still to be worked out, I think, are meetings within council about things like staffing and the Police Accountability Board.
Mary, I'll also point out, and especially for the new council members, that PPW is a one-on-one. The committee meets with one department, DES, PPW and DES, that's one. And NBD meets with NBD. But the finance committee covers every little thing from the mayor, everything that falls under the mayor law, communications, all this stuff. So, the meeting that Mitch referenced that happened just an hour ago is part of our agenda, was to talk about how we would have future monthly meetings about the legislation. So that's it's in the process of getting set up. So it'll likely be earlier in the month in the future, in the cycle, I should say.
And I would imagine that the Public Safety Committee would have the same issue.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
I would just like to comment to President Melendez and Vice President Lupien, just kudos on these rule changes. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Well, thanks, everyone. Lots of great questions tonight. I'm sure we'll get these answers turned around pretty quickly. And don't hesitate to still reach out if you have additional questions, please.
Yeah, especially about those tweeners.
Yes.
Take
And
care.
Thanks,
can we have
everyone.
a shout out to Donna Nelligan Barrett for doing such a great job with interpreting?
Oh, yay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks
Have
to
a
all
good
those
night,
people
everyone.
plowing the streets.